So, I've always been both a big Greek mythology nerd and a big musical nerd. I was a Percy Jackson kid in middle school, I read every George O'Connor Olympians novel, saw Lightning Thief in Chicago with my friend Jessie, and Hadestown in Chicago with my boyfriend James. But there's one Greek mythology musical, or rather, series of concept albums, that's been hugely popular for quite some time now that I somehow didn't even hear about until about a year ago when it was already halfway to completion. You saw the title. I'm talking, of course, about Epic. My friend Freya played a song from it at a 2023 New Year's Eve party, and I was like, oh, I like this song a lot. This sounds like a neat little indie concept album. I can't wait to wait. 17 million views? So yeah, Epic the Musical is a retelling of the Odyssey that's had a truly meteoric rise to popularity online the past 2 years as new song cycles or sagas were released, with a passionate online fandom on a sheer scale I honestly haven't seen for a musical since Hamilton. Much like Hamilton, the story is entirely sung through in about 40 songs, with the music, lyrics, and lead performance all being done by one guy with a notable online presence who's become something of a fandom darling. Now, you might ask, is Epic as masterfully, lyrically, and musically crafted as Hamilton? Well...
You are the worst kind of good, 'cause you're not even great.
Okay, in fairness, as this comment from Isabel Moania puts it, this is just a small TikTok project by a handful of passionate 20-somethings that happened to go mega viral. So even though it's technically a professional musical in the sense that its composer, writer, actor Jorge Rivera Aarons' full-time job now, it should absolutely not be held to the same high standard as most things you'd see on Broadway. At the end of the day, this is a TikTok musical, but among TikTok musicals, it's the gold standard. This heartfelt passion project is capable of truly amazing things, and that should be celebrated. Picking apart its admittedly often amateurish parts can very easily come off as rude or mean in a way that criticizing amateurish lyrics that come out of mega corporations like Disney could never be. With that said, musical theater is an art form that thrives on criticism. Live performances are malleable and can undergo various changes even years or decades after they come out. For instance, some of the fan-favorite parts of Hadestown were new additions for the Broadway production. In an even more pointed example, Oscar Hammerstein called Sondheim's first musical that he wrote in school the worst thing he'd ever seen.
What?
So he workshopped it with him, and then Sondheim went on to become, bar none, the greatest American musical theater lyricist who ever lived, which I say without an ounce of hyperbole. Then he went on to inspire and assist others. Anyway, throughout this ranking video, I'm going to share my mostly positive thoughts on the 9 concept album sagas of Epic, but also share a little bit of how I think there's room for improvement in each of them. For the visuals, I'm using Jorge's officially commissioned animatics, lyric videos, and art unless indicated otherwise in the corner of the screen, with links to all of them in the description. The number transitions will be me playing my favorite tune from each saga on the kazoo, and the ranking element is based on my personal tastes. So don't feel insulted if your favorite sagas aren't to my liking. Oh, and full spoilers for both Epic and the Odyssey, to whatever extent you can spoil a millennia-old tale. If Epic sounds interesting to you from how I've described it so far, check it out and come back. Okay, I've rambled long enough. Let's start off the rankings with... The Troy Saga is the first saga ever written and released for Epic. And it shows! Okay, I said I'd try to be mostly positive, so let's talk about the good first. Unlike a lot of people I've heard from, I actually have a lot of fun with the rap at the beginning and hearing all the name-dropped heroes. Diomedes will lead the charge, Agamemnon will flank the guards, Menelaus will let our mates through the gates to save big money at Menards. Although, it is odd that hardly any of the characters introduced in this opening number play any role in the story. Speaking of things that get dropped,
Get it?
Odysseus killing Hector's son was very much not in the original Odyssey. Most of the time, I don't know what to make of this decision. Like, it definitely has pathos to it, but it leads to the end of the horse and the infant feeling lyrically stilted. Odie's poppy little "I'm on my knees for ya" makes him sound like a jilted lover asking his girlfriend to take him back, not like a general begging the king of the gods not to make him commit infanticide. I don't know, I feel like this adaptational change had a lot more thematic resonance in some of the cut songs, but as is, the thematic implications are mostly subtext. So back to the song. Fumed with rage is the worst lyric in the saga and the start of a recurring issue I have where the sentences and phrases are made unnatural sounding in order to shoehorn in as many internal rhymes as possible. I'm probably going to be saying this a lot throughout this video, but to my mind, more rhymes does not equal better lyrics. I could make a whole other video about that, honestly, but anyway, next song is Just a Man. It's decent, and I like the motifs it introduces, but it also doesn't feel like a slow build up to that crescendo of an ending, since there's a lot of belting throughout. I think it needed to be performed with more restraint on the first chorus. Yeah, I'm a backseat director, what can I say? Full Speed Ahead could have been the opening song since it's where the stuff that actually matters gets introduced. I like several of the melodies here too, but again, the lyrics are pretty awkward and very dry and expository. I think the reason the Troy saga ranks last for me is that it's overall emblematic of the musical's biggest shortcomings. Like, okay, here's a big one. Why is there so much yelling and belting in this song that is not at all a climactic confrontation or emotional moment? But hey, then we get to Open Arms, which has a wonderful performance from Stephen Dookie. Polites is such a sweetheart. I've heard people question how a man so gentle and pacifistic could have just been to a war for 10 years, but like, maybe he was a medic in the tents or something. We don't know. Come on, guys, give a little leeway. I don't like the instrumentals here because they sound like Owl City, but that's a personal preference thing. The middle section with the Lotus Eaters is also awkwardly written as all heck, but if I did too many lyrical nitpicks, we'd be here for hours and would probably get flamed in the comments. Luckily, we finished strong with my favorite song in the saga, Warrior of the Mind. Tegan Early is impeccable as Athena and easily one of my favorite singers in the show. This song shows off her stunning vocals with a total earworm melody and a lot of lyrics that suit Athena's personality really well. I like the Athena, badass arena part. That's just pure unbridled fun. Love the character moments too. My boyfriend and I quote young Odie's smug little ha 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 on a regular basis. Speaking of James, he said before that Warrior of the Mind is the song where Jorge really found his footing as a songwriter and started making bangers, and yeah, I agree. I mean, there's bangers in My Heart Says Go, but this was where the bangers started happening in Epic. Warrior of the Mind is very much the highlight of an overall rocky saga. Coincidentally, Warrior of the Mind is also the only song in the show without any slant rhyme line endings. Look, I'm not some stuffy rhyming conservative who thinks that any slant rhyme is inherently bad, or even inherently bad for a musical theater song, but too often in Epic, it doesn't fit the characters or the moments, and feels haphazard to my ears rather than purposeful and poetic like it does in, say, Hadestown. Please listen to Hadestown if you're an Epic fan and you haven't. Again, rhyming styles in musical theater could be its own video topic. There's a lot more I have to say on this issue, but for time's sake, let's end this saga and move on to... Now, I hate to pick on the new kid, but the Ithaca saga has got some serious flaws holding it back for me. Again though, let's start with some positives. I know I just complained about the show's over-reliance on slant rhyme, but I think The Challenge is a great song with great rhymes, as the slanted and perfect ones alike do feel natural here. I heard from another YouTuber before this song came out that it was a masterpiece, so my expectations were really high, and what delivered on them the most was Annalee's flawless vocal performance. Oh my gods! And the soaring violas in the background, ugh, so easily a favorite from this saga and the show in general. The waiting bit at the end was so sweet and made me tear up a bit. And Hold Them Down is really solid. Right from the demo version I could tell it was gonna go hard, but it's enhanced by Aaron Alexander's performance as Antinous. He has such a rich voice that he imbues with so much of Antinous's gritty character while still sounding amazing. However, the very ending was kind of a red flag that this saga was going to fumble the bag a bit. Odie shoots Antinous, but he doesn't shoot through the axes. He doesn't shoot through the axes. He doesn't even shoot through the axes, so what was the point of the challenge? Odysseus shooting through the axes while lightning cracks and the suitors stare in awe was one of my favorite scenes in the original Odyssey, and its omission is my single least favorite adaptational change. Then there's Odysseus' eponymous song, which does create a really cool ambiance at first. I love these opening lines, but then I get completely taken out of it by some of the lines in the middle. As long as you're around, my family's fate is left unknown, proceeds to explain exactly what his family's fate would be without his intervention. Yeah, I can tell that by my family's fate is left unknown, he's trying to say my family's safety is always going to be in jeopardy, but I can also tell that he's not saying that. Plus, if you're gonna make unfitting statements for the sake of a rhyme scheme, can the end rhymes in that scheme actually be full ones instead of half? I'd rather have no rhyme than a half rhyme that sounds forced. But then I can't help but wonder is very strong musically and lyrically. It has a tenderness to it that's a great contrast to the shouting, belting, and darkness that pervades the rest of the show. Father-son bonding go into my eye. I love how we get this nice last moment for Athena where she and Odysseus have effectively switched philosophies from the beginning of the show. That's a trope I enjoy. And the reunion with Penelope is built up to very well, really given the weight it deserves. The whole song is full of fantastic choices, and the work Jorge put into rewriting the last 3 songs clearly paid off. When Odysseus sings, "I've got one endeavor, there's a girl I have to see," I couldn't help but finish the line in my head as Penelope, and I think that's what we're supposed to be thinking in that moment, especially considering the Penelope motif plays on the acoustic guitar a second later. And then there's the finale. So, Would You Fall in Love With Me Again, like the previous song, starts off well. Kinda gives me Pierre and Andre vibes, but toward the middle, there's a little too much melodramatic high belting for my liking. Sure, if there's any story that would justify constant shouting and high notes, it's an epic like the Odyssey, but when you make a musical this long, variety is the name of the game. The audience needs a variety of tones, voices, volumes, styles, so their ears don't get tired of it. They need a reprieve from this show's general shoutiness. Multiple people I've spoken to have agreed with me on this being a recurring issue in Epic. As the saying goes, sometimes a whisper is louder than a shout, and that's as true on stage as anywhere. If there was ever a moment in the show to do something sharply different, volume and tone-wise, it'd be for the finale, but unfortunately it just feels kind of standard to me. Oh, but the Penelope part that became popular for edits is obviously really good though. And I am quite fond of the instrumental reprise of Just a Man with those soaring piano glisses in the background. That's lovely. But one more gripe. Why doesn't Odysseus say, "It's no longer me" in this song? That could have been such an easy and satisfying payoff to the Underworld saga. Oh well. In summary, the Ithaca saga is overall a good denouement for this show, but far from my favorite saga. It ranks above Troy for being generally more polished and having more variety in tone, but lower than all the others for its missteps and missed opportunities. I like the part where Antinous made a cake for Telemachus' birthday, that was pretty funny. The Cyclops saga is kind of middling to fair for most of it, and then it has one huge standout moment in song at the very end. Let's start at the beginning though. Polyphemus.
This is the song in every show that no one likes because it's boring.
This one is plot over style, but it has a couple neat melodic things in it, and I like the vocoder the Cyclops uses. I can imagine this looking really cool on stage. And I do get some amusement out of the "I'm so glad we see eye to eye" bit, but I feel like people forget that that actually good and funny lyric is preceded by the baffling phrase, "For your gift, I've one to reply." Why would anyone say that sentence that way? Okay, we're done with this song. My friend pointed out that you could cut Survive and not much would change. Like, the Cyclops could just attack Polites and another few crewmates at the end of Polyphemus, then pass out, and we could then have gone straight into Remember Them. Yeah, she definitely has a point. I guess Survive does do a good job showing us Odysseus's overconfident bravado, and it sounds cool, very Hiroyuki Sawano-esque. I hate to harp on this point, but I do feel obligated to mention the stray, ill-conceived lyrics like "No dying on me now, defeat is not allowed." Not to be a nerd, but the rhythm of this song's hook is an iambic trimeter with the loudest and longest beat in the middle. Short, long, short, long, short, long, which forces the strongest emphasis of the line onto the word on. No dying on me now, where it should absolutely not be. Emphasizing lives in this line was effective, but here? Don't emphasize the preposition, emphasize the verb. This sentence is about the action. But fine, I guess we get to have our Attack on Titan reference or whatever, so who cares? And no, I'm not going to discuss the politics of Attack on Titan here because that's a whole other can of worms. I just want to move on to talking about the 2 Cyclops saga songs I actually like. Remember Them is strong. I love it when songs that are plot-focused still manage to have catchiness, style, and palpable emotion. Although there's this one part in the chorus that I misheard the first time I listened to it. I thought it was the fallen and the frayed, as in the people who were fallen and torn up. It turns out it's the fallen and afraid, but how can they be afraid if they're already fallen? Whatever. I'm just nitpicking again. Let's get to the ending because it's so cool. This whole song is very well paced and culminates in a dramatic moment where Mr. Nobody goes and doxes himself. This could have easily been frustrating in a lesser TikTok musical, but the music and the way it builds makes it feel so awesome that you don't even care that it's a terrible decision that will ultimately result in hundreds of preventable deaths. You're just like, heck yeah. And the real star of the show with this saga is its final number, My Goodbye. This was the song that first got me interested in listening to Epic, mostly because of what a compelling vibe it has. There's something so juicy about this intense friendship breakup between Athena and her ex-protege. They go at each other's throats with insults, but you really do see how they used to work well together and why they want to break it off. My boyfriend says he feels like it happens too early, but I disagree. I think even though we've spent very little time with Athena, Warrior of the Mind establishes her character so well that we know what her relationship with Odysseus was originally like, and we see why this moment is a deal breaker for her. Apparently Athena was originally planned to be the narrator of Epic, which could have been really cool, but I think that using her sparingly like this is a good choice and makes her moments stand out more. But anyway, My Goodbye. So easily one of my favorite songs in the show, quite possibly my #1 favorite. The piano rocks, the music is catchy, and the lyrics are solid. The rhyme of wiser and wisier gives me life. That moment hits perfectly. Chef's kiss. So even though I've made it no secret that I'm not too fond of the first half of this saga, this song alone is enough to carry it up to #7. The Underworld saga, more like the underwhelming saga. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I'm just kidding. I like this show and this saga. Please don't troll me online for this. Not kidding about my placement though. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, for as much of a fan favorite as the Underworld saga is, it didn't quite resonate as much for me. If this is your favorite saga, I can totally see why. There are definitely things about it that do go hard. Heck, it's probably the best saga objectively, since a lot of really smart people have said it's the best, but again, this is my subjective list, okay? Okay, for starters, positives. I love Anticlea's part. That's one of only 2 moments in Epic that actually made me cry a little. I love how she's voiced by Jorge's real mom. I love how her theme is Odysseus's theme, but in a major key. It's such a heartbreaking little lullaby and is so effective. Polites' part is great too. The instruments are really cool. Odysseus thinking about the infant is so succinctly ominous and eerie. So what don't I like about it? The chorus. I know this is already a recurring theme throughout this video, but aside from the fact that I personally don't like poppy, forgive Durden type melodies, I think the first chorus is too shouty and doesn't build to the song's climactic conclusion. Less is more, guys. Less is more. The shouting would have been earned if it didn't come in until the end, but it's there at the start too. I know it seems wrong to complain that a TikTok musical sounds too TikTok-y, but to my mind, the catchy, TikTok-friendly parts of this song are at war with the poignant, emotional ones. But then No Longer You is super interesting. Tiresias is such a cool character both in this show and from all the other mythological lore about the gender-fluid blind prophet of Thebes. This one still sounds like Forgive Durden, but in a good way this time. I still think the shouting could have been reined in, and there are a couple lyrics I would tweak, but the imagery is super cool. The melody is nice and eerie in the vein of a come little children type creepy lullaby, and I love the foreshadowing, especially the indistinct voices at the end. Yeah, turns out they're saying siren song, Scylla throat, mutiny, lightning bolt. Who knew? And finally, we get to Monster, which might be my personal pick for the most underwhelming song in the show. Now, it's interesting from a character standpoint to have our good pal Ulysses rethink his journey from the point of view of all the enemies he's faced, and then consciously decide to accept ruthlessness, and I can also appreciate that this saga has an arc that doesn't require a big flashy battle, and is carried by an internal conflict instead, but it is the Act 1 finale, and Act 1 finales are usually among the best, if not the best and most climactic songs in a musical, filled with drama and bombast. If Monster took place in the middle of Act 1, I'd be more forgiving of slight structural and lyrical messiness like rhyming guilt with ourselves and wrong with piss him off, but here at the end, I was expecting a complete showstopper, and what I got was... oof. Yeah, if I were producing and overseeing a Broadway production of this show, Monster would be the first song on the chopping block for rewrites. But you want to hear something wild? I still like this concept version of a song called Monster better lyrically than Monster from Frozen the musical.
Here's the thing they see, the thing I have to be.
What? Again, Monster's not bad, either one. I just wasn't as impressed with this one as a lot of the fandom. And for a saga with only 3 songs, the amount of great stuff can't quite stack up to the quantities of quality in the other sagas for me. But James says he would rank the Underworld saga 3rd though, and specifically asked me to mention that he is, and I quote, innocent in all this. Sorry, Epic fandom. And now for another saga the fandom loves that I'm relatively less sold on. The Thunder Saga was the first saga for which I attended the midnight live stream when it came out, and I remember being kind of stunned by the dark and surprising turns it took. In fact, I thought it was sometimes too dark, kind of veering into edgelord territory a couple times, but hey, at least it made choices and took risks unlike some musicals of the past few years. Let's break down the songs. To start us off, we have Suffering, an Act 2 opener that didn't make a huge impression on me at first, but that I grew to love, especially after seeing fantastic animatics of it, particularly Gigi's with that gorgeous intro. It's so catchy, and I listen to it a ton. I'd even call it my 2024 Song of the Summer. Hashtag Suffering Summer, am I right? Depicting sirens in a musical always feels daunting because you have to write the most ethereal and enticing music possible or it doesn't work, but these electronic ee-ah-ah-ahs get the job done. Then we get to Different Beast, and I don't really like this one, but hey, the horn sounds cool.
Enough, Reggie.
Yeah, I think Odysseus shouting "kill them all" at the end is corny and overindulgent. It would have made him look way more intimidating if he was cold and detached rather than shouting like the same thing he usually does. It's fine though. Scylla also has too much shouting for my tastes, as is the pattern for me with this show, but it does have some nice contrast in its softer parts, and KJ Burkhauser has a very cool and unique voice. Oh, and this isn't Epic's fault, but I can no longer take any variation of a villain saying "we're not so different, you and I," seriously anymore. It's played out at this point. Mutiny is strong character and story-wise. I like the instruments and some of the lyrics at the beginning, like the mounting accusations against Odysseus. The fight was cool, especially with the crew picking sides, but the song kinda loses me in the latter half. Like, what do you mean now that we've pissed them off? This is a serious moment. Do you have any other words for angry gods besides pissed off? This is the 4th time in the show that characters describe the gods with that exact phrase. The first 2 were okay, but this is getting a little outrageous. I feel like I should have more to say about Mutiny, given that it's 7 minutes, but I'm just overall very neutral on it. Luckily, Thunderbringer is solid and puts a nice bow on this whole mini arc. Luke Holt is a perfect Zeus. The synth and thunder effects sound amazing, and there's some clever wordplays. At first I wasn't sure whether I liked how it ended, but the more time has gone on, the more it works for me. It's an interesting change, and initially I fully blamed Odysseus for actively choosing the selfish option, but that's an uncharitable view. In retrospect, it's more like he just didn't choose to sacrifice himself to bail out the people who betrayed him and put him in this situation in the first place against his multiple warnings. Oh yeah, and I now headcanon that this bargain actually happened in the original Odyssey, and Odysseus just lied about it when he was telling his story. That seems like something Homer's Odysseus would do. The Ocean Saga is a complete mixed bag. Get it? Bag. But yeah, two of the best songs in the show, one that's just pretty nice, and the worst song in the show, all in one windy, wavy package. So this saga starts off on the absolute wrong foot with Storm, my least favorite song in all of Epic. It opens with this big, dramatic, video gamey sound with orchestra and choir that I would like in a vacuum, but it feels like it comes out of nowhere and we get no time to breathe after My Goodbye. Also, the main threat in this song is just a storm, which is difficult to be scared of directly after seeing a man-eating Cyclops. The lyrics are pretty blah and overly expository, and the melody is so poppy and shouty. Make it stop! Oh, it stopped. Yeah, the discovery of the island in the sky is pretty good, even if the fact that they get onto it by shooting a bunch of harpoons that I guess these ancient Greek warships had the whole time and took with them after the war was over stretches my suspension of disbelief pretty far. Whatever, it's a video game inspired musical. We're operating on Zelda hookshot rule of cool logic here. Luck Runs Out is a great reprieve from all this intense plot stuff to just check in with Eurylochus and the crew. It's nice. I like the foreshadowing, and above all, I like that it sounds different. A much needed chill vibe for once. It's kind of shocking that all the non-Polites crew members haven't gotten a dedicated song up to this point. Song 11. A YouTuber called Rainsky made a video timing how much each of the roughly 25 distinct characters sing in Epic, and Eurylochus at number 2 has about a quarter of the time Odysseus has, which feels unbalanced. Like, I get that it's the Odyssey, but do you know how demanding of a stage role this is going to be? Evan Hansen typically tops hardest contemporary male musical role lists because he's on stage for every Dear Evan Hansen song but one. But that's not a sung-through musical, and its cast album is half the length of Epic. Odysseus is only going to be off stage for 21 minutes of this 2-hour and 23-minute pop opera. I'll discuss the balance of characters more later when we get to the saga where Odysseus is off stage a lot, but for now I'll just say that while Luck Runs Out doesn't do anything mind-blowing, and yeah, infuse us with strife sounds awkward, I'm glad the song is here. The beginning of Keep Your Friends Close kinda sounds like Arazia's Shadow song. My audience probably won't understand that reference, but suffice it to say, it's pretty whatever until we get to Aeolus himself, played by Sesame Street singer Kira Stone? Yeah, that fits. Aeolus was male in the original myth, but has no canonical gender in Epic and is played by a woman, which I can absolutely get behind. They kind of remind me of that specific genre of magical, picaresque stage characters like Peter Pan or Robin Goodfellow, who are also commonly gender-bent. Just this sprightly, mischievous trickster figure who's not evil, but really enjoys messing with our heroes. It fits perfectly, and their playful sing-songy laughter and playful sing-songy chorus are an absolute delight. I like the Winions too. This is also the first time we hear Telemachus and Penelope in the show, and it's a nice moment. Still, zooming out a bit, if this show becomes licensed, I can imagine it being annoying someday to get cast in a community production as one of many minor characters where you only get to be on stage for like a minute, if that much. Most shows with large ensemble casts have a lot of big group or company numbers that everyone can be in, but that doesn't work as well when so many major players in this story are on separate islands. Get ready to do some double casting, future high school drama departments. Anyway, on to Poseidon! Oh yeah, this is how you make an entrance! The Sephiroth-style choir, the Jaws strings, the trumpet, I love it. It creates such an intense sense of awe and impending doom. Then Poseidon starts singing, and wow, Steven Rodriguez completely steals the show in this part. He walks the line between casual and intimidating expertly, giving Poseidon both a disgruntled surfer dude aura and a ruthlessly threatening one. Speaking of, I also love this song's main thesis. Ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. It sounds like some Machiavellian proverb from the Renaissance that became a common saying, like the ends justify the means in the previous song. But no, this one is completely original. It's like an evil version of the saying that mercy to the cruel is cruelty to the merciful. It's great. It also has a great triple rhyming beat to it and lots of hissing, cacophonic S sounds. Ruthlessness is very fitting. But that great lyric is counterbalanced by my least favorite lyric in the entire musical right here in the second verse. You are the worst kind of good, 'cause you're not even great. Huh? If there was any line in this show that I could say reminded me of Wish, this would be it. I complained about it to a die-hard Epic fan once, and they said I was just snobbishly and carelessly misunderstanding the point of it. But like, no. I understand what this line is supposed to mean. I just think it's bafflingly expressed in a way that completely takes me out of the show. Is it really all that snobbish to think that you are the worst kind of good because you're not even great is a bad lyric? Okay, so let me overanalyze for a bit. Goodness, in most people's understanding, is not a Venn diagram that has a greatness circle inside the majority of it. It's more like a spectrum where great is a stronger version of good, you know? I think this line is trying to have an Into the Woods style insight into the nature of being good, where it defines its terms.
Nice is different than good.
But the phrase not even implies that most kinds of good are also great. And we're supposed to infer that being good but not great means being too moral and pacifistic to perform the feats of violent strength that make a quote-unquote great hero. If that's the case though, why not differentiate the terms entirely rather than saying that one is a kind of the other? Have Poseidon tell Odysseus he's too good to be great, or so good that he'll never be great. If this line and the meme line from Wish have taught me anything, it's that musicals should be careful how they use the word even for emphasis. But that one part of the lyrics is really the only thing I would change about this song. It's perfectly paced, perfectly acted, has such delightful instrumental flourishes after each line, and absolutely earns the dark ending it builds to. What a number. More than enough to carry the saga to number 4 in spite of that weak beginning. Woo! Vengeance Saga takes the bronze! The Ocean Saga is more cohesive in terms of plot, but unlike the Ocean Saga, this saga doesn't have a single bad song. Right off the bat, it gives us one of the best songs in the show. Not Sorry for Loving You. Yeah, this is the one other epic song that made me cry. I love Calypso, and if you hate her, you will die and go to hell. I said Polites was the biggest sweetheart in the show, but she's an easy second place. Apparently, she has haters in the fandom because she imprisoned our boy Laertides McBaby-Eater for 7 years, but come on, guys, he's done way worse and you still love him. That's not to defend her actions, but they do look tame in comparison to his numerous war crimes, and I'm sensing a bit of a double standard here. Anyway, yeah, Not Sorry for Loving You good. I'm not even gonna nitpick the lyrics or style because I feel like this is a situation where this show's poppy style really fits. I like how the backup vocals are also Odysseus and Calypso because those are the only voices she's familiar with. I like the constant echoing up until the very end. Most of all, I love the decision to have Odysseus tell Calypso he loves her, just not romantically. It would have been so easy to paint her as the villain and make him hate her, but their dynamic is so much more interesting this way. We see very little of it, but enough to know that Calypso has been caring for Odysseus for years at this point and was basically the only one he met on his journey to show him unconditional love and kindness. Calypso wasn't exactly lonely or sad or full of unrequited romantic longing in the original Odyssey, but this version of her is much more sympathetic. Aw, don't worry, Calypso. Leo Valdez will come get you in a couple millennia. Well, would you look at the clock? It's Hermes time! Ha! Dangerous rules. It's not my favorite of the two Hermes numbers, but it's no slouch. 80s synth and the Greek god Hermes is such an inspired combination, and I love this song's motivational feel. It gets you pumped for that last leg of the journey. The lyrics are also great. I can't believe the opening uses a caution metaphor that makes sense. See, wish it's not that hard. And I know I say more rhymes doesn't equal better lyrics, but the dance with fate, enhance your state, plans so great wombo combo in the opening really works. Mostly because the line that closes it out, if your plan's so great, is a natural sounding phrase that seems like something Odysseus would have said even if he weren't going for 3 double rhymes in a row. Oh, and the official animatics don't affect my rankings, but this saga has my favorite one because I really love the funny spinny raft shot. Thank you, Gwendy. Very cool. I do have to admit though that I kind of prefer the demo version of this song, not because I don't like Troy Doherty's vocals, but because I thought the instruments sounded better there. Like, based on the demo, I was expecting louder synth beats, more hi-hats, a more intense ba-ba-ba when the tempo picks up. Just generally more musical bells and whistles, you know? This is a song about going all out and pulling out all the stops, so I like the instruments to do likewise. Still good though, I had lots of fun making an AMV of it. I was nervous for Charybdis before the Vengeance saga came out because Jorge said the saga would involve a lot of shouting, and this late in the show it would have been easy for the repeated monster encounters and battles to get old. In the end though, my fears were unfounded. Charybdis has a great melody, doesn't artificially inflate the level of intensity and fear, and doesn't overstay its welcome. My initial reaction during the release party when this song ended was, wow, Charybdis was a pushover. But it makes sense if you think about it. We know Odysseus won't die, this isn't even in the top 5 greatest threats he's faced, so why draw it out? It's not a song I come back to a lot, but it serves its function effectively. And most importantly, it's a great setup for...
Get in the water.
Get in the Water could have been called Ruthlessness 2 because that's basically what it is. Only this time with a dramatic wah-wah-wah-wah-wah-wah sound that really amps up the tension. I wouldn't put it above Ruthlessness, but it's a cool return for Poseidon. I like the part where Odysseus in the Ruthlessness melody is like, maybe you could change your mind, Hitler. Yeah, not much else to say. Let's get right into
600 strong!
Oh, so this is what Jorge meant when he said the Vengeance saga would have a lot of shouting. Yeah, this eats actually. The beginning of 600 Strike is quite frankly the most anime moment I've ever heard in a musical, and that includes musicals that are direct adaptations of anime. Now, is it a bit cheesy that Odysseus can come back from near death with the anime style power of friendship and sheer wife guyness and then use a god-powered jetpack to deck Poseidon while dubstep music plays? Yes, and that's why it's fantastic! I will eat that cheese up with the finest wine I have because this over-the-top moment goes so hard and is completely earned. Musical theater, like anime, is one of those mediums where larger-than-life expression is expected and encouraged. Jorge absolutely sells this moment, and Poseidon has been built up well enough as a central antagonist that it feels justified. The dubstep remix of the 600 Men part of Full Speed Ahead also feels like that classic anime trope where the intro theme plays during the final battle. Not only that, but the ending where Odysseus gets the upper hand enough to torture Poseidon into letting him go is fantastic and harrowing. Lore-wise, I think it would make more sense for a character as wily and now untrusting as Odysseus to demand that Poseidon swear on the river Styx never to harm him or his family, since otherwise, what's stopping him from drowning all of Ithaca after Odysseus leaves? But that's a minor nitpick. This song rules. An excellent cap to an excellent saga. And that last line is just the cherry on top.
How will you sleep at night?
Next time.
Your mom!
Oh, heck yeah! This is some top shelf stuff. The Wisdom Saga is so solid in virtually every respect. And you know what its biggest strength is? Variety. This saga has the most variety of voices out of any saga in the show. It switches gears from every saga before it and detaches itself from Odysseus' point of view, focusing instead on Athena and Telemachus. And I don't even like the Telemachid in the original Odyssey, but here it works so well and is such a welcome change of pace. And when I say that, please remember that it's not that I don't like Odysseus or Jorge's performance. He's a great singer and actor, but there is such a thing singing as too much of a good thing in a show like this, especially when you already have a huge cast who will be twiddling their thumbs in the green room most of the show if their roles don't get beefed up or double cast for stage productions. Like I mentioned in Luck Runs Out, this is where I want to take a moment to discuss character balance and variety in musical theater. There's this quote from the Hamilton I threw on screen earlier, where Stephen Sondheim advised Lin-Manuel Miranda to avoid the, quote, monotony of rhythmic and verbal attack over the evening. And you know that video I mentioned that timed Odysseus' singing at 40 minutes to Eurylochus' 11? Well, for comparison, I decided to pull out the old stopwatch and time how much Burr and Hamilton each speak and sing in Hamilton, and Burr only lagged 7 minutes behind Hamilton at number 2. So Hamilton has a 7-minute lead to Odysseus' 29-minute lead. Oh, and my friend Ellie made a cut of the Hamilton pro shot called Hamiltons, where no Hamiltons appear, and it has an over 40-minute runtime, whereas Epic without Odysseus on stage would be 21 minutes. Do you see my point? Yes, granted it is the Odyssey, and yeah, all of the sections Odysseus is in are pretty relevant and would be hard to cut or rework, but the show leaves a lot of the secondary characters feeling a little bit underdeveloped. And I'm not saying that having a big cast but giving one character most of the stage time is inherently bad, or that there's some specific magic number of stage time to aim for, but these times are a way of quantifying a subjective feeling of Odysseus overexposure that I get from Epic. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled Wisdom Saga discussion. First off, Telemachus. His introduction is a real highlight of the saga for me. I love the absolute earworm Disney-style I Want song that is legendary. One thing that stands out to me about it, apart from how catchy it is that Telemachus and Odysseus have basically opposite circumstances and desires. Odysseus has all these supernatural heroic adventures in and after the Trojan War, but he's a family man at heart and all he wants is a normal life at home with the wife and kid. Meanwhile, said kid has a quiet, sheltered life in the palace, but all he wants is to go out and have grand adventures like his dad's doing. Odysseus is a legend who wants to be just a man, Telemachus is just a man who wants to be a legend. That's cool and an interesting parallel. Oh, and the little character moments in Legendary are great, from Telemachus' endearingly dorky legendary to Antinous' instantly iconic
What you gonna do about it, champ?
Little Wolf is pretty good too, a catchy video game style fight with some divine intervention in the middle. This song also made me notice how Antinous, like every other incel, is weirdly obsessed with bones. Anything else? I like the corner adorn her rhyme, that's neat. After that, We'll Be Fine falters a bit in terms of musical and lyrical efficacy in my opinion, and given that it has the fewest plays of the saga, I don't think I'm alone in that. It's not bad, it's just not as punchy or polished as the other Wisdom Saga songs. For instance, the phrase, "to fall is to learn one way" sounds forced to me. One way of what? No one would say to fall is to learn one way if they weren't trying to make a triple rhyme with all, turn, and great, the last rhyme of which isn't even a full rhyme. More rhymes does not equal better lyrics. That said, I do very much like its slower and more contemplative tone. Telemachus rewriting the Warrior of the Mind melody and inadvertently being this bridge that brings Athena and Odysseus back together is great as well. When I first heard that "I don't think he'll mind," I was like, whoa. And hey, the Goddess of Wisdom is getting some wisdom from someone else. Yeah, I like this one a lot thematically and story-wise, but for what it is, it's kind of the weak link in the otherwise extra strong Wisdom Saga chain. The subsequent time dive is interesting and fun and all, but the real star of Love in Paradise is the immortal Calypso. Yeah, like I said, I love her, and I love Barbara Wangui's great performance. I like that her song has an actual Calypso beat, it's cute. As is the Just a Man motif changing to "I'm not your man, lol." This song has great comedic bits and also has a more relaxed feel than the rest of the show, which is a welcome change of pace. Another thing I appreciate is how Calypso's not a high note belter like 90% of the cast, and instead gets a range of notes that are actually comfortable to sing. Even with very little stage time, she makes such a huge impression. I also like how we can see the effect that the 7 years he spends alone with her has on Odysseus. The ending part of this song is chilling. Overall, I once again have no real criticisms of this song. Love in Paradise is gorgeous and serves the story perfectly. Now for God Games. Oh boy, God Games. This song's reputation precedes it. It's incredibly popular for animatics and AMVs, and it's easy to see why. The game framing device gives this song a clear trajectory of Athena persuading each of 5 random Olympians to set Odysseus free. That's an adaptational change from the original Odyssey that allows for more Greek god cameos, more musical styles, and more video game-inspired challenges than ever before. I think it'd be easy to complain that these gods don't add much to the themes or overall narrative and are kind of just thrown in there at random because of name recognition, but the thing is, Athena isn't just trying to convince them. After a saga full of seeing Odysseus at his worst, she's convincing us, the audience, why we should care about him again, and doing it in a way that's fun, expedient, and satisfying. At least, that's my interpretation. So let's run down each god's segment real quick. Apollo's voice is so pretty. Hephaestus being played by Jorge's dad is cool. Aphrodite and Ares also have great performances that culminate in their battle being the most satisfying one in the bunch. It's kind of surprising that the Ares-Aphrodite battle isn't the last one, since it has the most dramatic resolution, but I don't know, I guess the Queen of Heaven doesn't want to be upstaged even when she only has 12 seconds worth of stuff to say. Yeah, I know, I've heard the criticism that it doesn't take a lot to convince these gods, but with the context of the visuals, it's meant to be a video game, so the verbal arguments are only half of what's going on. And come on, the song's already 5 minutes. Do you want it to grind the show to a standstill for like 10, 20? As is, it has so much momentum and so much style. How can you not love discoing Athena and her saying Odysseus is kind of funny? That got a chuckle out of me. Oh, and of course, that ending.
Is she dead?
You know, it was really unclear.
I feel like this was a lore-breaking moment for a while, but given that Athena does come back, I can allow it, especially considering the gravitas of it. That warrior of the mind and legendary reprise in the instrumentals, Zeus feeling the regret too late, and above all, the thing that changes his mind being Athena's heartbreakingly simple plea of let him go. No tricks, no sophistry, no rhetorical devices, just this short and to the point urging to make things right. So powerful. One of the strongest moments in the whole show. So, what saga topped this? Okay, if you knew the epic sagas, you knew this one was coming, although it might be higher than you expected. The Circe saga. Not exactly a fan favorite from what I've heard, probably not objectively the best saga, but it is my #1 favorite. It just speaks to me. And a huge point in its favor is Circe herself, played by the incomparable Talia Sindel. Her voice is just enchanting. We love Circe in this house. Her introductory number, Puppeteer, makes excellent use of counterpoint in an asynchronous duet between her and Eurylochus. It's got such a great beat. That Eurylochus rap at the beginning is absolutely kinetic and always has me toe-tapping along. And it ends with one of the funniest bits in the show.
What was it? A woman.
What?
Once we get to Circe herself, she is such a presence, commanding attention with her regal strings and catchy little rhymes. One of my favorites being the internal one of Worry and Circe, delivered with such bounce.
Don't worry, Sassy's got you now.
It's easy to see why she's the only character to have a full saga named after her. This song makes it abundantly clear that this is Circe's world and we're all living in it. She balances playful sweetness and regal elegance perfectly with just the right amount of smug undertones. James's favorite line of hers is, "Welcome to the best part of your lives," because it's kind on the surface, but also backhanded. "This is going to be the best part of your lives, my dears, partly because I'll treat you so well, but also because you pathetic mortals have never had it this good, and you never will again since I'll pigify you." So, yeah, banger. It reached the highest spot of any musical song on my Spotify Wrapped last year, and I got so obsessed with it that I made a modern Greek cover on Twitter, link below. Ooh, guess whomst it's time for now?
Hermes?
Good guess. I will forever argue that Wouldn't You Like has the sauce. The instruments and backup vocals give off the kind of catchy pizzazz and loud, enthusiastic synth backing that I was so desperately missing in Dangerous. The melody is groovy, Troy's performance oozes personality and charm, and the lyre arpeggios in the background are such a perfect instrumental choice. I love imagining this song staged as a glow-in-the-dark rave, and I have very few complaints with it. Sure, the emphasis is on the wrong word for you can be hurt or you can beat her, since we already know whom Odysseus wants to beat, And sure, it's a little unclear what your outcome preferred means here. I mean, Astor said it was inverted adjective and noun order, but I always thought preferred was being used as a verb rather than an adjective. Like, wouldn't you like for your outcome of choice to be the one that gets promoted? Ah well, whatever, it's still my jam. Lots of people have pointed out that the beginning of Done For samples the habanera from Bizet's Carmen, but I'm gonna do you one better and say that I think Circe's theme itself is a sped up version of the habanera. I'm not the only one who hears it, right? The back and forth between Odysseus and Circe here is great, and it really helps that Jorge and Talia have fantastic chemistry. Oh yeah, I feel like I should mention that they're actually dating. Cute! I asked James, if you wrote a musical, would you cast me as an awesome witch queen, and he said yes. Woo! Anyway, this song establishes interesting parallels between our boy Ulysses and the Witch of Aeaea. And it segues well into There Are Other Ways.
There are other ways of persuasion.
Yeah, There Are Other Ways became a running gag in the fandom for good reason. Just when you think Odie's got Circe on the ropes, she says, "I roll to seduce," and gets a nat 20. Out of nowhere, the music shifts into a lush, romantic tango that catches you off guard, as does Odysseus, seemingly falling under Circe's spell as he sings, "I'm just a man, forgive me." Now, there's a lot of different interpretations of this scene, but I think the most natural reading is Odysseus actually being attracted to Circe and tempted to cheat, but ultimately choosing not to out of faithfulness to Penelope. Of course, in the original Odyssey, he does cheat on Penelope multiple times, but we can't have this modern version of infanticide McWar crimes be too unlikable. And spoilers, his son by Circe would have killed him in most versions of the myth, so the moral is don't cheat on your wife or you'll die. Yay! What was I saying again? Oh yeah, the song. For as much as I joked about it, I think the adaptational faithfulness was good, and I like the "beg you Circe, grant us mercy" rhyme. That's cute. I wouldn't be surprised if you told me this song was originally planned to be the Act 1 finale in a really early draft. I mean, was there any reason for Circe to riff up 3 times and then back down on that money note at the end? She sounds fantastic, obviously, I'm not complaining. Just wondering what the purpose was when this isn't a particularly emotionally charged moment for her. And that F5, by the way, is the highest note in the whole show, according to Joe Nathan Music 11. That's wild, but I think the most surprising and interesting thing about it is that this show that's infamous for having a ton of high notes never actually goes above an F5. That treble staff, that's the ceiling. I didn't think too much of that at first until I saw a video CALXIYN, who edited the Thunder Saga part for this video, thank you CALXIYN, made recently about how operatic soprano parts in contemporary musicals are more and more scant these days as poppy mezzo belting, usually in chest or middle voice, has become the default way of expressing powerful emotions. It's a great video, check it out, link below. On one hand, it's awesome that some new shows have bucked classical musical norms by writing parts for women that are more grounded than they are trilly and frilly, but on the other hand, a lot of women are coloraturas whose natural voices fit a higher register and sound strongest above the staff, myself included. And we know Talia can do operatic soprano. There's a short on her channel of her hitting an A-sharp 6! I won't fault the Circe saga for this since it's not a flaw per se, but I have to acknowledge here that it would have been so cool to see Circe's music not just sample a melody from opera, but make use of operatic vocality as well. Oh well, that's a wrap on the Circe saga. While it might not advance the plot or give as much variety as it possibly could have, I think it functions perfectly as this self-contained little episode of a song cycle. It doesn't have a single bad track, the characters and tunes are top tier, it gives me everything I could want out of an epic saga. It took over my playlists and my heart more than any other, and for that, I bestow onto it the title of my #1 favorite saga in Epic the Musical. Phew! That concludes my ranking of every saga in this wild and wonderful passion project. Big thanks to James for inspiring me, Freya for sharing the show with me, and thanks to Jorge and the cast and crew and all the amazing artists for bringing Epic into the world. An additional thanks to my editors, CALXIYN and Buster, and friends for helping me make my first foray into long-form videos like this one. Depending on how it does, I'm looking forward to making more like it in the future, like the musical theater and writing analysis ideas I mentioned throughout. If you somehow got through this whole video without having listened to Epic and it sounds like your cup of tea, go for it! And if you're an epic fan who hasn't really gotten into many other musicals before but is looking for some recommendations of where to start, well, I'll close with a few. First off, other Greek mythology musicals. Obviously Hadestown, like I mentioned, but you could also check out an obscure show called Mythic that's a retelling of the abduction of Persephone. That one has some bops, particularly the song Dark Damaged Soul. Give it a listen. If you like Epic's disco era and wish there was more Greek mythology disco in musical theater, check out Xanadu, the movie or the Broadway show. I'm only half joking. If you're looking for more recent stuff, my favorite non-epic musical of last year was Suffs by Shayna Taub, a musical about the women's suffrage movement, which is set to have a pro shot released soon through PBS. Speaking of best musical snubs, I'd never pass up a chance to recommend Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, my favorite musical ever. In fact, here's a list of my top 10 favorite musicals ever. Fight me about them in the comments. If you prefer getting into musicals that are easily accessible through legally available pro shots, I've put together a whole playlist of ones with professional recordings that are available for free here on YouTube. Link below to that too. Maybe I'll make a whole video of recommendations later, but for right now, I'll leave you all with those. Thanks for watching, and stay dangerous, my friend.